Well, aloha everybody. I want to make a special thanks and much warm mahalo for my San Francisco NAAAP ohana and any other Hawaiians in the audience and any island folks here. Right? Yeah, great. Okay. In any case, my name's Michael Mao, as mentioned, and I know some of you are looking at me and thinking, is that really Michael Mao? It doesn't look like Michael Mao. I get that all the time when people expect me to show up at locations. It's like for some of you who look more Asian than I do, but you have a Caucasian last name and you show up at places, and they're like, you don't look like a gardener. Well, I get the same thing. They're like, you don't look like an Asian. So anyway, just to clear up my bona fides for being here, I'm actually a product of what I would consider two railroad cultures. On my father's side, it was a railroad ethnic group that predominantly helped build the Transcontinental Railroad from the west heading east. And my mother's family was an ethnic group that predominantly helped build the railroads east heading west, and they met somewhere in between. So, anybody want to guess what my other side is? So Chinese is one side, and Irish. And so my mother's family is Irish, and people always say, would you speak Chinese? And I'm like, well, number one, which Chinese? There's a lot of different Chinese languages, but the simple answer is no, I don't, because I'm a fourth generation. My father was born in Hawaii, my grandfather was born in Hawaii, and my great-grandfather came over when Hawaii was still U.S. territory. Whereas my Irish family has only been here for about 2 generations. So really the question should be, do I speak Celtic or Gaelic? And once again, the answer would be no. I do speak Japanese, studied it in college, and lived overseas in Japan for a couple years. But I wanted to thank Chris and Jenny for inviting me and giving us the opportunity to sponsor this event and say a few words. I was a little intimidated when Chris showed me the lineup of all the VIPs and the speakers here, all the CEOs and presidents. And I'm thinking, what am I going to be able to say above and beyond what they're going to be able to say? I mean, what are my experiences that might be different from their own? And I thought, well, you know, I've been in public service, as they mentioned, for 21 years at the CIA, 5 years with the United States Air Force. So one thing I have experienced is I have experienced a lot of bureaucracy. I have been in very large, multi-layered organizations. And so I'm going to make a few brief comments. I'm going to do it in a very military manner, so it's going to be kind of bullet things insofar as and shoot these out at you to give you some of my perceptions and experiences with middle management. And for our purposes, middle management is going to be folks who are in that position where they are actually supervising and responsible for supervising people. They manage resources, both people and money, but they're not usually the final say or the person who can decide and make the final decision. So they have at least 1 or 2 layers of management above them. So it's a very challenging position. How many of you are in middle management right now? Okay, very good. Well, the challenges with middle management, as probably most of you know, is that it's kind of like if you, I have a slight advantage. I was born, I'm a middle child, so that's kind of like middle management. Because you're always having to work on expectations, and you're always having to try developing some type of harmony and balance between those who are working for you or reporting to you and those that you yourself have to report to. The other challenge with being a middle manager is usually how do people get promoted into middle management? It's because they did a good job at their job. It wasn't because they were a leader, it wasn't because they were a manager, it's because they were a good programmer. Now, is that going to mean that person's going to be a good boss? And most of you probably have bosses who obviously probably weren't good bosses, but they were good employees. So one of the problems with middle management is there's very limited or token training to become good managers. One of the other challenges with that is motivating the staff to budget and being responsible for their careers, because you're not just there to get the job done, you're actually there to manage these people, and they're hoping that you're going to be looking out for their careers. And some of the things I've learned insofar as doing the middle management is that when I was at my first middle management job was when I was at the tender age of 22. I was a sergeant in the United States Air Force, and they put some people under me. Now, management in the military is very easy and very difficult. It's very easy because anybody that had one less strike than I did, I could tell what to do. Anybody that had one more stripe or had some bars on their shoulder would tell me what to do. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we made good managers, because basically that type of hierarchy isn't developed in creating good employees. It's basically in disseminating orders and things of that nature. So one of the first things I would recommend, if you are in middle management or you're getting into middle management, is meet with everybody that's working for you. I've gone into some areas where I met with people, and the first thing I want to know is, are you doing what you think you should be doing? Or are you not doing that? Because a lot of times they don't know, they're thinking, well, this is what my job description says, but this is not what I'm doing. So when that's the case, what you want to do is, in my last position, we actually rewrote the job description, because more than half of the employees who were doing what we wanted them to do, but it wasn't what the job was that they initially were hired for. So I said, okay, we have a disconnect here, so how are we going to fix it? We still want them to do this work, so we'll change the job description, which sounds a lot easier than it is in government. So the other thing is that you have to help them insofar as managing their careers and transitioning with them, so getting some feedback insofar as what they want to do and where they want to go next in their careers is always a plus too. And then you also have to manage up. And that's a challenge, I think, for a lot of Asians to stereotype, because they don't feel that they can go and approach somebody that is above their current manager and things of that nature. But you need to do that. It's a good way of getting yourself noticed and showing what you're actually doing. So those are some of the things insofar as what you could do with some of your employees. The other thing is you have to get to know your bosses. So it's not just a matter of managing the people below you, you actually have to work with the people above you. And this is where it becomes more of a kind of smart career political thing. Let's say you have a boss who's very good, and they acknowledge you're doing good work, but they're not the one ultimately responsible for your promotion. You need to know who is in your company that is responsible for your promotion. Who is it that's going to say, yes, you're going to get promoted or not? And you need to make sure, if it's not the person that's supervising you, that your supervisor is doing a good job in letting that person know what you're doing. And in some cases, they're not. They appreciate what you're doing, but they're keeping it in-house. They might have other people they're managing. So you have to take it upon yourself to make sure somehow that that person above them actually knows what you're doing. And one of the things I did, one of the helpful things with at CIA is I belong to our Asian Pacific employees group. So I know a lot of different officers at various levels, and I'm constantly, sending them little things. This is what I've been doing, and so forth. And while some of them are not in my immediate chain at this point, but at some point they could be, most of their colleagues and friends are at that upper management level. So at least if my name would come up, in some type of promotion panel or something like that, at least somebody would be able to say, yes, he's doing a good job, things of that nature. So those are some of the really basic things. But what I really wanted to kind of talk about, not so much the middle management insofar as what you need to do, but more kind of life and work lessons as well. And these things transcend everything, so it doesn't matter whether you're in IT, it doesn't matter whether you're not in IT, but some of the things that obviously everybody's learned in their career and in their life and what your parents have told you, so it's not going to be anything new, but sometimes hearing it again is always a benefit. And one is you have to be honest. I mean, no matter, as you go through life and as you go through the workplace, you have to be honest. Sometimes it's painful, and I'm not talking about being completely honest. It's not like when my wife says, how do I look in stress? But I'm talking about if you messed up at work, you need to tell them that you messed up at work. You need to be honest, and you need to make sure that your management is not blindsided, by the fact that your budget's over. You need to let them know as soon as possible, because the longer you delay, the worse it's actually going to be.